The lands of Avalon hold so many layers of mystery, mystic, and magic. Humans that have come here on pilgrimage for thousands of years with those intentions of healing and being in that state of devotion. That's also what communicates with the land and activates the land at the same time. For me, a lot of the layers of remembrance relate to Merlin, and many people perceive or think of Merlin being a person, but Merlin is more a title. It's like the high priest, the high druid, the high wizard of these lands.
Welcome to the Spaceholders Medicine Podcast. We're your hosts, Malvina and Stephanie. This podcast is a sanctuary for spaceholders to delve into the unique medicine they offer. Each episode will explore their personal journeys, diverse modalities, and the profound experiences that inspire and shape their work. Join us as we uncover the transformative power of their craft. Enjoy! Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Spaceholders Medicine Podcast. My name is Malvina, and I'm here with my co-host, Stephanie, and we're here with our guest for this episode, Shamir.
Hello.
Hello. Before we do a deep dive and conversation with Shamir, I'd just like to give him an introduction. Shamir has devoted his life's journey to healing and supporting others on their path to true embodiment. Of Indian heritage, he was born in Singapore, raised in Austria, and has lived and traveled across many parts of the world. Today, he calls Glastonbury, the ancient Isle of Avalon, his home. For over 20 years, Shamir has studied and practiced a wide range of healing modalities from physiotherapy to Theta Healing, craniosacral therapy, breathwork, and sound healing. He has also immersed himself in various ancient traditions and indigenous cultures. In the past 6 years, he has begun to embrace the ancestral wisdom of his maternal lineage. Shamir is deeply rooted in the mystic warrior path of the Sikh tradition. Much of what he shares is infused with the grounded strength and spiritual insight of this lineage, offering powerful transmissions for healing and purification. His multicultural background allows him to hold expansive perspectives and a vast understanding of our multifaceted human experience, always guiding us back to the oneness of creation, embodied in truth and love. Welcome, Shamir.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a beautiful introduction.
Yes.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Mel.
Of course, we're so excited to have you here. I'm pretty sure we have so much to cover with regards to your journey, but to start off, are you able to please share with us a glimpse into your early life, growing up between Singapore and Austria, and how this has shaped your path as a space holder or someone who is doing this work?
Yeah, so if I start sharing about my early life, probably I have to start sharing about my grandparents and about my parents, as well as how I ended up in these different places very much relates to their journey. With my grandparents being originally geographically from the Pakistani part of Punjab, uh, which originally was all India. My mother's parents from a Sikh family, my dad's parents from a Hindu family. My dad was born and raised in Delhi, and my mom was born in Punjab, but when she was 3 years old, her family left to Singapore. And she was raised in Singapore and was very much identified as being a Singaporean. So somehow, although in a heart, in a spirit, she was a very traditional Indian woman, through social conditioning, I would say she very much wanted to be, also was a Western woman and wanted to be identified as a Singaporean and not as an Indian person. And then my parents met in Delhi, married in Singapore. This is a very short version of the unfoldings. And then if you ask my parents or my dad now, he would say it's destiny that brought them to Austria. And my sister was born in Singapore, but then they left to Austria. I was conceived in Austria, and my mom went back to Singapore to give birth because I'm born in December and she had only experienced one winter previously and just wanted to get back into the warmth and her familiar environment with a family. I know Stephanie's laughing because she experienced some of the cold here in the UK, which, to be honest, isn't as cold as it gets in Austria. But anyway, when my mom was pregnant, she went back to Singapore to give birth. So I was born in Singapore. But then when I was 5 months old, my mother and my sister came back to Austria, and I was raised in Austria since that early age. But being raised in Austria, my mom, as she was very much identified as Singaporean, she instilled in mine and my sister's consciousness that we were Singaporeans. We weren't Indian, we weren't Austrians, we were Singaporeans. But then growing up, of course, in a different environment, culturally, socially, language is very different, Austria compared to Singapore. Um, as a child or an adolescent, you want to be somehow part of the environment that you live in. So at some point, I somewhat let go of my Singaporean identity and tried to embrace my Austrian identity. So I identified myself as being Austrian. And then later on, somehow through some life experiences, I recognize there is a lot of wisdom and there are a lot of blessings in my ancestral lineages, so in my Indian heritage. And then from my late years as a teenager, there was a strong pull and a strong calling to connect to my Indian heritage and my Indian roots. It's an interesting experience because now when people see me, right, they believe I was raised in a traditional Sikh household, that I am very traditionally Indian, which is very true from a certain perspective. But then at the same time, I'm also Austrian and I'm Singaporean, but I'm not really Austrian and I'm not really Singaporean at the same time. And I'm Indian, but I'm not really Indian. So it's somewhere being part of all of these cultures, but not fully fledged part of these cultures at the same time. So it's a space in between which brought up a lot of challenges and questions, I guess. But then at the same time, it gifted me a wider horizon to view things, to perceive reality, and to be able to connect to vaster aspects of people that are somehow very much confined through one culture or one society. So thank you for listening. That was a long explanation to your question, but I hope it all made sense.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for sharing, Shamia. And it really sounds like the essence of you is truly woven through different geographic locations across the world and also across the journeys of your parents and your ancestors.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that I'm living in the UK now because before coming here, I was based in Bali and I didn't really consciously choose, oh, I'm going to move to England. It was more the ancient Isle of Avalon that really welcomed me. And by being here with the colonial history of India and the British Empire and the British Empire in Singapore, there's been a lot of karmic, personal, and ancestral healing that has been occurring here. So I've learned that nothing in this creation happens just as a coincidence. Everything is part of an infinitely intricate divine orchestration. So it all makes sense. And by being here without having intended to end up in the UK, there's been a lot of revelations that have come into my life and a lot of blessings. So I'm really grateful.
How would you say your path of growing up in these different places and also identifying with these different nationalities shaped your path as a space holder? How does it impact or inspire how you hold space for others?
That's a beautiful, beautiful question. Thanks, Stephanie, for inquiring. By being able to relate to myself beyond the limitation of just one culture or one society, I'm able to see that in others as well. Nowadays, we perceive humans belonging to a certain nationality, to a certain country with confined borders. But if we look at not even ancient history on our planet, we see that people were migrating, there were the traveling routes. If you look at this island here, Great Britain, people think or believe they are English, but if you look at the different invasions over the history, there are a lot of Scandinavian people, the Vikings that invaded, the Normans that came here, even further from the Middle East. So the genetic pool is not as clear as it seems to be with our nationalities right now. So to embody who we truly have come here to be, it is important to recognize and to realize our multifacetedness and to see beyond any confinements. And I feel with my history and my experiences growing up and then later on also traveling the world and living in different places, I can hold that vast perspective, what it means to be a human on planet Earth beyond being English, being German, being Australian, being Chinese, because there are more things that unite us within oneness than actually separate us.
I was wondering, as you were sharing as well about your early life, before we get into grid activations, I was very curious in within your family, was it supported the inquiries that you made? Whether it's like your sister, was she also as curious as you with regards to your lineage and how everything was woven together?
Ah, yeah, it was quite an adventure with my family. You might know this when Indian parents move to a Western country, a Western society, they have dreams for their children, right? To become doctors or lawyers. That will be the highest standard of the fulfillment of those dreams. And somehow I was very much on that trajectory as well. Like I was the best student in my class and was having like these dreams of studying in an elite university and having my career. But then suddenly, through certain life experiences, things shifted and changed. And basically, when I was 18, I told my parents I want to go to India and find my guru. And my parents were quite confused because their idea was, oh, we came to Western society to give you a better life. Yeah, we can speak about what is better, what is worse. And now you want to go back into what they consider to be like a developing country and want to connect to something that is outdated somehow. So there were conflicts within the family structure. I was very rebellious, I would say. My sister, she followed through very seamlessly studying economics, and it has a really great, she's very successful in a career in a Swiss bank right now. So we are very on very different ends of the spectrum, and it wasn't easy to follow my heart's desire, but somehow I have some stubbornness within me and I just follow through with what I feel is right. And it shook up family structures and expectations, but I feel very blessed and grateful how all of our family members have been able to learn from it and grow from it and evolve through it. And yeah, we are very close now, and there's a lot of love on and respect for everyone in their own individual journeys.
So, what does the term spaceholder mean to you, and how has your relationship with that role evolved over time?
What does space holder mean? The word itself explains a lot. It's about holding space, but I guess a lot of people won't really be able to relate to that. But the intention of what I do is to support people to embody their truth, to embody their highest well-being, to fulfill their soul's path. And on that journey, very often we have to let go and we have to release patterns, traumas, inhibitions that we have gathered. And as a space holder, you hold people in a neutral state of awareness and presence. Through that neutral reflection, allow themselves to remember who they are. And in that process, there can be a lot of releasing, a lot of healing, a lot of shedding that happens. But it is holding a space anchored in truth, love, and compassion. And of course, in this work, along this journey, there are many modalities that can be used, many ways of how the space holding can be facilitated. but the essence of being a space holder is to hold a space of truth, love, and compassion. And another aspect I think that is really essential is to be able to listen, meaning to have an inner groundedness of neutrality where we can hear the person beyond wanting to respond, beyond wanting to react. Because very often, for people to release what doesn't serve them or to embody their truth, what needs to happen is for them to be able to express themselves, to hear themselves, to be heard without any judgment, without any interference. So the art of truly and compassionately listening is also a big aspect of being a space holder.
Thank you, Shamir. It really reminds me of how when I first had my personal pilgrimage in Avalon with you as my guide, how I felt so safe in your guidance and your support because you really do embody these traits of being such a supportive and present guide.
It's my
Yeah.
honor and pleasure. And along that journey, it's not that I like decided, oh, I'm gonna do this for other people and started working right away in holding space for other people. There were, of course, certain courses and education that I did, but a lot of the journey was for me to let go and release blockages, traumas, inhibitions that I've been holding. And through that releasing within my own reality, I have learned to hold that space for others. And along this life's journey, it must have been more than 1,000 people that I've worked with in group settings, in individual one-on-one settings. Things can become really wild and rough sometimes. And I feel very grateful, blessed, and honored through my own spiritual practice as well, and what I have been able to purify within my reality, that there is not much that can scare me when people get into the process of releasing or get into the process where certain inhibitions come to the surface, anxiety comes to the surface. I am able to hold a space of inner peace and tranquility, and that allows, as you shared, Steph, other people to trust that everything is all right, even if I'm feeling crap in this now moment and a lot of stuff is moving through my body. It's all right. I'm held, I'm taken care of. And I feel very grateful and honored to be able to share that.
Shamir, can you share what is grid activations and also what is grid work, what is earth gridding, and how did doing this become your vocation?
Yeah, many different layers to these questions. So let me start with grid work, or the grid lines, the ley lines, the energy lines of the planet. In the same way as we as humans have our chakras, like energy centers within our bodies, or the energy channels known as meridians in the Chinese medicine, or the nadis from the yogic tradition, so do land masses have their energy centers, have their energy lines where energy travels in amplified ways, right? Ley lines, grid lines, song lines from the Australian indigenous tradition, dragon lines in the Far Eastern tradition. There are many different words that relate to that energy that travels through the earth and is very often is underground waterways, right? There's a lot of water that flows underground the earth, or underground crystal veins where within the soil or the geology of the planet there is a higher amount of crystalline structure, and we know that through water or through crystalline structure energy travels in more amplified ways. um, then we have a lot of ancient and sacred sites all across the planet, from the pyramids in Egypt to the pyramids in Central America to Machu Picchu in South America, Uluru in Australia, Avalon, Glastonbury in the UK. So these are places, you could call them chakras. Chakras are energy centers where more than two or three of these energy lines intersect. And at these intersection points, like roundabouts, right, the energy circulates, and there's an amplified amount or an amplified property of energy that flows in these energy centers. So that is just to explain the foundational concept of energy lines within the planet and energy centers within the land masses. How I started to learn about that and recognize that was when I lived in Bali, because Bali is also a very powerful place, a volcanic island, a lot of water, sacred water, waterfalls, the rice paddies, the ocean. And in one way of mapping out the chakras of the earth, Bali is a place where the masculine and the feminine, the main masculine and feminine ley lines of the planet intersect. And so by living in Bali, somehow slowly I learned about earth energies, started connecting to earth energies, started um, mapping out other energy centers across the planet. And that was a time where I also started working with indigenous cultures and indigenous wisdom from different traditions. And also learned that these indigenous cultures are deeply connected to the earth. Not only the earth with the five elements, the wind, the water, the fire, the earth, and the ether, but beyond that, also with the energy that runs within the earth. And that again relates to the concept of oneness, right? A lot of people speak about oneness. And initially, when I heard about oneness, it was more a sentimental notion. Yes, we are all one as a human family. Let's love each other and live in harmony. But later on, going down the road, I realized this oneness is literally an energetic connection that we hold as electromagnetic beings, as human beings, with the electromagnetic field of Mother Earth, of Gaia, and the different land masses. And that was a time where I also started working a lot with sound, vibration, and frequency, another bridge into this concept of unity consciousness, understanding that everything in this creation is a reflection of vibration and frequency, right? Even what we perceive as dense matter is electrons, neutrons, protons that are vibrating on different levels, and there's a lot of space between these particles. So through that concept of oneness, sound, vibration, and frequency, connecting to indigenous cultures. At some point, living in Bali, life spun me on this whirlwind tour all across the planet. And the reason was my mother in Austria being diagnosed with cancer, so it pulled me out of Bali, and I spent a lot of time in Austria with my family, but traveled to different parts in Europe to share my work as well, and with my ex-partner of that time who had lived in on Kauai, one of the Hawaiian islands. We spent some winters on Kauai, and in this traveling to different places on the planet, there was a lot of remembrance that came up for me. For example, traveling to Kauai, a lot of ancient remembrance on ancient planetary civilizations. Some of you might know it. On Lemuria started coming into my awareness and into my presence. And this journey all across the planet continued for, I think, around 5 years, where I didn't spend more than 2 months in one place. And it was a very spirit guided journey from North to Central and South America, Australia, all across Europe, Southeast Asia. And along that journey, I remembered many of my past lives in different places, many of the ancient connections, the ancient civilizations of this planet. And that's how, after landing here in Avalon in Glastonbury, that concept of grid activations evolved. And now I shared about the grid lines within the planet and how we are connected through electromagnetic frequency with these grid lines. But the concept of grid activations brings in another component, which is the component of time, right? We have space and time that interact and correlate together, meaning all of our personal history, all of collective human history, ancestral history, every aspect of these reflections of time can be mapped out in the geography and the geology of the planet. And within this concept of oneness, as I shared previously, nothing happens just by chance. Nothing happens just as a coincidence. Everything is part of a divine synchronicity. I learned to somehow read how time and space connected to one's human history, to one's ancestral history, interrelate, and how I can translate that to people so they get guidance on their life's journey, to remember who they have truly come here to be, to remember beyond the linear concept of like me being Shamir, born in Singapore, raised in Austria, beyond like that linear timeline of my life's history, to understand, oh, there's a reason why Singapore? What are the gifts of that birthplace of Singapore? What are the gifts of being raised in Austria? What are the gifts of my ancestral heritage? And how can I bring that into my embodiment, clear confusion or fragmentation, and activate that potential within myself or within other people that I work with? So that was again quite a long and extended explanation, but I think these different points were significant and I hope they make sense to you.
Yeah, it's really amazing, Shamir. There's like so many intricate layers involved in this journey, in your journey. And with everything that you have experienced and have been putting up there, it feels like your journey has included both like very wonderful experience as well as some initiations as part of this path of your remembrance. So I'm very curious, have there been any specific or pivotal moments in your journey that initiated you deeper into your path of service?
There have definitely been pivotal moments. One pivotal moment, as I shared previously, what pulled me out of Bali was my mother in Austria getting diagnosed with cancer. And accompanying her, supporting her and my family during that time was definitely a pivotal moment, a rite of passage. We journeyed very deep and very closely during that time. I feel very blessed that my parents were very open to all of the guidance or support that I offered them during that time, because as I shared, I'd studied physiotherapy, many alternative healing modalities, studied a lot around nutrition as well. So I know with other friends, if parents have a severe disease, very often they reject alternative advice of their children. But in that case of my family, they were very grateful to receive any guidance that I had to share. And let me just come like to the last 2 months of my mom's life, where she was in the palliative care unit and she was in a very tender and fragile space where she could have left any moment. So she was somehow drifting between the realms already, right? Between this living human consciousness, and some parts of a soul's essence were on the way out already, and she came back, and on the way out, and she came back. And during that time, I was spending a lot of time with her. My dad and I was sleeping alternately with her in the palliative care unit in the same room, just to let her feel supported. And during for 2 months, I was giving her sound healing journeys for every evening. And sound is such a beautiful way of allowing people to remember that there is something beyond this physical manifestation. Because when people transition into their afterlife, right, very often there's the fear of what is going to happen when I leave this body. But sound is a beautiful modality to soothe and open that passageway. So that journey was a very pivotal moment. Those 2 months felt like being on some kind of plant medicine. It was a very trippy time, a very spiritual experience, very challenging, but very beautiful at the same time, because the expression of love that was felt and was shared during that time was just beyond what I'd ever experienced. And that definitely was a rite of passage. And after my mom transitioned, of course, there's the loss, there is the grief, all of that needed to be processed. But I'm sharing this as well now because you see me um, as a Sikh now. And my mom was from a Sikh family. My grandfather dressed similar to me and also kept a beard and had a bug, a dumala. This is what we call a turban. And I feel the blessing that I received from my mother and from my ancestors because of the time that I was able to be present with my mom during her time of transition has transpired by being here in Avalon and that ancestral lineage really being awakened within me. So that was one pivotal moment, one rite of passage. In my early 20s, there was another pivotal moment. There were specific relationships that really amplified and catapulted me on my journey in consciousness in various ways. So there have been many, many of those. And yeah, I could share a lot more stories, but I should leave it there for now.
You can share it with us when we are in Avalon together.
Oh, yes, I will.
Thank you so much, Shamir. It sounds very powerful, very tender, and also so inspiring how your parents opened to you and also to your gifts in supporting your mom in the way that you best know how at that time.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
was there was this moment when my mom sent me this message, oh, she's in hospital, but she'll be all right very soon. But somehow my intuition felt, oh, it's something serious. And I was on Kauai at that point at a very special heiau. Heiaus are not are the Hawaiian temples. And that was a birthing heiau. The Dalai Lama, when he was on Kauai, he acknowledged that there is a portal where all of the souls that enter into this planetary existence entered through that portal. So we spent that night on, it's called a mother tree. And I got this message from my mom, and I felt, oh, it's something serious. And I right away booked my flight back to Austria, landed in Austria, and I felt in that moment, oh, everything that I'd studied, everything that I've learned was to prepare me for this moment to be able to support my family. So it was a crazy and wild time, full spectrum of emotions. But now looking back, I'm really, yeah, I feel very honored and grateful for all that I've been able to experience.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So, I know that you work with the Akashic fields and also speak about rewriting timelines. And I wonder if you can speak more to that. What is this process like? How does it support transformation in the work that you do?
Yeah, as I touched base during my sharing on grid activations and my work around the timelines and the grid lines and that connection of time and space in our individual embodiment is basically a bridge into the Akashic records. So the Akashic records is like a compendium of consciousness that holds all of the consciousness of our personal human history in this incarnation, but also of our past lives, of our potential future lives. is like a bridge into the quantum reality, right? A lot of people are into quantum physics and quantum mechanics right now. So the Akashic Records is a bridge into that quantum reality where we have access to infinite potentialities within our lives. But beyond that personal lives is also the ancestral lives, collective human history. It all interacts and it all plays together. And all of that is accessible through sound, vibration, and frequency. That's how the Akashic records are stored. The whales being like the totem animals on this planet for the Akashic records, as they communicate with sound through thousands of miles within the oceans. So, working with sound directly has an effect on the Akashic records that we hold within, which are also reflected within our DNA, like the strands of our DNA, the patterns within our DNA. And when I grew up in school, we learned that, okay, our mother has a set of DNA that is passed on, and our father has a set of DNA that is passed on, and we are basically the result of that set of DNA. But our genetic information is much more malleable. People have learned now through experiences within our lives, right? DNA can transform and can shift as well. And that again relates to the Akashic records. Um, so ancestral history, the experiences of our great 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 grandparents got passed on generation by generation into our lives, right? And these experiences can be beautiful, joyful, glorious experiences. But if we look at planetary history, we have to admit that there have been also traumatic experiences that people have gone through. If it is wars, famines, where people had to flee from one area to another area. And so all of these layers are stored within the DNA, within the Akashic records as well. And so working within the Akashic records for me is I work with sound. So sound opens a connection to the Akashic records, and then there are ways through sound, vibrational frequency to clear fragmentations, to open up blockages, to harmonize those aspects that we are specifically working with within the Akashic field, and then to activate the harmonized potential so that the people that I work with can in a harmonious way uh, and embody aspects of them that are closer to their truth and closer to a harmonious state of consciousness and of being. And that happens individually, but as we are all part of this unified field of consciousness, through those individual aspects, it also ripples into the collective planetary field of consciousness. Also, if we work, like when you guys come to Avalon as a group of people from Singapore, there are so many threads through time and space that you bring here. So if we work consciously with the land, especially on sacred sites where more of these energy lines intersect, where energy travels in amplified ways, we also work within our individual but also the collective field of the Akashic records.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone share or speak about the Akashic records the way that you have in a very, it feels more tangible and embodied and rooted. And I loved what you said about sound. I don't think I've also met anyone who's used sound to work with the Akashic records. And I'm very, very excited to meet you in person and experience Avalon with you as the guide. Thank you, Steph, for creating this retreat and bringing us all together. So I'm very curious, what has Avalon taught you, and what is it like to be a guardian of those lands? And how would you describe Avalon consciousness?
Thank you. I'm also really looking forward to welcoming you guys and journeying on the lands here. Last year, when the group from Singapore came, it was really, really beautiful and really profound. And I feel this is somewhat a soul contract that I have. Like it's not for no reason that Steph found me, and I don't think there are many people residing here in Glastonbury that have this Singaporean connection. So it makes things, yeah, very, very special to welcome you people. I know it's not all people like born and raised in Singapore, but people that have a strong connection to Singapore, also other lands. So Avalon, it's a magical realm. Now people see Glastonbury as this three-dimensional town where people reside, and but in ancient times, Avalon was a place of a mystery, of magic, of healing, where people would come on pilgrimage to receive healing, where people would study the mysteries of existence, like priest and priestess schools, because of the ley lines that intersect here, but there are many, many other aspects within the lands and the waters here that make the energy of this place very special. But also humans that have come here on pilgrimage for thousands of years with those intentions of healing and being in that state of devotion. That's also what communicates with the land and activates the land at the same time. The lands of Avalon hold so many layers of mystery, mystic and magic, many layers connecting to Mary Magdalene and Yeshua, Joseph of Arimathea, other layers that connect to the Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur, Merlin, and for me, a lot of the layers of remembrance relate to those templates of the Knights of the Round Table, to Merlin. And many people perceive or think of Merlin being a person, but Merlin is more a title. It's like the high priest, the high druid, the high wizard of these lands. It's a funny story connected also to Singapore, which is the Merlion, right? The Merlion is the landmark of Singapore. There's the mythology of the Merlion. And if you look at Merlion and Merlin, there's just one letter difference, which is the O. So there is, and Mer relates to the mer beings, Lemuria, that consciousness, the consciousness of water. So there is that direct bridge and connection with Singapore and Merlin. And when you guys come here in person, I will share many other layers around that. But Merlin is a title of the High Wizard. And so there have been a lot of layers of remembrance to that realm of consciousness. But also when I speak of like King Arthur, the Knights of the Round Table, Excalibur, the Sword of Truth, um, there is a strong connection to what is awakened within me by being here in the UK, which is my Sikh heritage, which is also a warrior lineage. And we also honor the sword. And for us, the first mantra in the Sikh tradition is the Mool Mantra. And in the Mool Mantra, it is 5 times the word truth. So it's also a mantra of truth, divine truth being the highest authority. And as a warrior, not being a savage that just slays down whatever we don't like or whatever we oppose to, but actually a warrior is a person, or warrioress is a person of truth and of honor. And that sword holds one accountable to being in integrity, to being in righteousness, to being a protector of those that need protection. So these are some of the layers that reside within the consciousness of Avalon and have awakened within me. And through the different sacred sites, there are very specific stories that allow people to remember aspects of their own history, of their own magic that resides within them. And that is somehow what Glastonbury or Avalon has invited me to do, to welcome people here onto these lands and open these gateways of communication so visitors or pilgrims can remember deep aspects of their own consciousness and their own awareness. And Avalon also relates to the divine feminine very much, right? The goddess of these lands is Lady Avalon, which is embodied within the hills of these lands. So the divine feminine is really, the goddess is really present here on these lands. And somehow my life's journey brought me here after my mother's passing. Um, and again, that was a strong confrontation with that aspect of femininity within my life, the mother being the nurturer, our first teacher. So there's a lot around the divine feminine that can get reawakened and re-invoked by being here in Avalon. And in our mystic warrior tradition of the Sikh lineage, we honor the divine feminine. We relate to the mother goddess. We relate to the goddess, which somehow has been taken out of the equation in most of the religions. Um, but it is the goddess which empowers, which brings us sovereignty. And therefore, there is a reignition of that empowerment and its sovereignty in truth and in honor and in integrity and in love that communicates through Avalon. And that is what I feel very grateful and honored to be able to share by being here.
Thank you so much, Shamir. It makes
Oh,
me so excited and also in so much reverence for Avalon consciousness, and also for the work that you do.
thank you. It's my honor and my pleasure. And as I shared, when I got here after living in Bali, I was thinking more of maybe Mexico or Mediterranean island to base myself, but it was the consciousness of these lands here, of Avalon, of Lady Avalon, that was like, my child of creation, you stay here, you have a purpose and a mission. I'm not gonna let you go that soon. So I'm still here and very grateful for all that has unfolded and transpired.
Yes, I love that so much. And it also reminds me of how when I was in Glastonbury on my first day in August 2023, it was actually Singapore Nationals Day. And the message was so clear to come back again next year at this time and to bring back people from Singapore so that they get to experience the magic of Glastonbury as well.
Oh, thank you for following that call, Steph. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's beautiful and precious.
Yeah, and it was definitely supported, guided, manifested by spirit. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened
Yeah.
so easily, so effortlessly, both times, last year and also this year, getting the group together.
I'm excited. I'm looking forward to you guys coming.
Me too. Could you share a story or a moment from one of your retreats that really moved you so deeply or inspired you, reminding you of why you are doing this work?
There have been so many stories because with each person or with each group that comes here, there's a different realm into the Akashic records that opens up because each person of a group or these individual retreats holds their own energy and own frequency. So there have been so many stories, but I just remember I think it was the last moment of the 2 days that I guided the group from Singapore. And when we were up at the tour, I don't remember the words that we were speaking, but there was like a really beautiful activation of innocence and of joy that we felt when we were up there and we were standing in a circle after having gone on pilgrimage to many different places. And Singapore can be very hectic and people are focused on work a lot, and it can be like a hustle to make life work in an abundant way. And with the group and everyone up there, when I'm now connecting in, there was like this blossoming of joy that unfolded. Do you remember, maybe Steph, it was not Hayaya, it was
What?
something else.
Was it
Do you
what? When we were screaming abundance
Yes,
in Hokkien.
exactly. Yes, what
When we
what's
say
the word again?
Huada.
Wada,
Yeah.
yes. Wada,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes, so there was the real Wada activation that we had there in this circle, and I really felt it from the top of the tour rippling to Singapore, and from there like rippling through the grid lines through all of creation. Wada, that was it. Yes. That was such a beautiful moment. Yeah.
Wow. I was just gonna say I'm looking forward to a moment like that when we go visit Avalon in August. We wanted to know if there are some self-care practices or integration practices that you do as a space holder, whether they're rituals or yeah, just something that you integrate in your life.
From the perspective of oneness and unity consciousness, all is one. And we can see right now in the collective consciousness of this planet, there's a lot of beauty and a lot of magic unfolding, but there's also a lot of suffering and a lot of ignorance that is coming to the surface. So we as space holders have a responsibility, of course, for ourselves. But if we have the capacity to support that purification for the greater collective of the planet, I think this part of being a space holder to devote yourself to that harmonization of the greater good for all beings, and not only for ourselves or those that are close to us, because all is one and one is all. I try to have a daily practice which includes some movement, and usually for me is yogic practices like sun salutations and some other movement practices to keep my body open and also to strengthen parts of my body. Because beyond us being spiritual and energetic beings, we are also embodied as physical beings, and these aspects are not separate from each other. So it's important to nourish and take care of our physical vessel. And then also breath practices I try to do on a daily basis. And there again is yogic breath practices to balance the right and the left brain hemisphere and to still my mind. And then I do a daily meditation practice, which usually for me is a mantra practice. So reciting in my inner silent voice specific mantras, and these mantras also are about purification, so purifying my energetic vessel. Beyond that, again and again throughout the year, there are other things that I do to keep my vessel pure. Like right now, I'm doing something that is called the No White Diet, which is a cleanse. It's not a full fast, but there are a lot of things that are cut out of my food intake, which allow my body to regenerate on a very high level, and for my body to release toxins on a very deep level. And those layers, as I shared, we are energetic beings but also embodied as physical beings. Those layers, this purification on a physical level, um, correlates directly with like our energetic experience of being embodied. Like what I can say, my mind after a week being into this no white diet has really become very silent. So meditation goes much deeper, is there's much more presence. So some form of physical purification for me right now is the no white diet. Sometimes is other layers that I work with, other plant medicines, but it's more if there is something specific that has come to the surface that wants to be looked at or wants to be dealt with, then I go into other deeper layers of transformation or transmutation. Another thing that we do here twice a year, and everybody is welcome, it's a free event, is where we chant a specific bani, a specific mantra, 32 names of the goddess, for 48 hours continuously. And that process is also a deep process of purification. Um, so beyond holding space for others, I constantly work on purifying my own physical, energetic, mental, and spiritual vessel with different techniques, modalities, or in different ways. And I think is really essential for everybody to live a fully embodied, conscious, healthy, and happy human life, but especially for people holding space for others, because we dabble very often in tender, traumatic, energetic environments, and these energies or frequencies can attach to us. So it's important that we continue to purify ourselves.
Thank you so much, Shamir. And how would our listeners find you?
You can go to my website, which is gridactivations.com, or you can connect to my Instagram, which I've just recently changed from Grid Activations to my name is Shamir Singh .c. So get in touch, reach out, feel free to ask any questions. I am happy to share what I can or what I have to offer to support your journey of remembrance and embodiment. And with what I've shared so far, I think it's really interesting because if we look at Singapore, people are Singaporeans these days, but Singaporeans again are from so many different places of the world and have come together to create something really beautiful, a nation of different ethnicities, different cultures, different religions, different traditions. There is something to be recognized in the glory of that and in the individuality beyond being Singaporean. There are so many different lineages that have come together. So if anybody feels to do deeper investigation into the lineages and into the blessings that you carry, I'm very grateful and honored if you get in touch and there's any way that I can support or assist.
Thank you so much, Shamir. That was really beautiful. I actually have like so many more questions, but I don't even know where to begin. So I'm going to save that for when we connect in person in Avalon. We're so grateful. Steph and I are just so grateful that you made time and space to share yourself as well as your journey with us and your medicine. So thank you, thank you, thank you for the work that you do and for the journey that you've experienced to get here.
Oh, it's my honor, my pleasure. Really grateful to have had this conversation with you, Mel and Steph, and excited for you to come here in August and for our journeys ahead.
Then thank you to all listeners who are watching and enjoying this podcast. So see you next time.